you love playing golf? Doesn't matter. Today's guest is Paul Miles. Paul Miles is a leadership and learning and development expert, works for the Open University. He's got a great deal of really, really interesting things to say about leadership. And in this episode, it just so happens that they combine with golf. If you love golf, watch on, you're going to love it. If you're not the biggest fan of golf, watch on, you're going to love it. This is for business owners and leaders who want to learn how to develop their leadership skills in a very, very good way. Backed by fact, backed by academic research, and in this case, enhanced by golf. Enjoy! So Paul, right, I played golf when I was a kid, pretty bad at it, got in a lot of trouble, but that's a story for another time. But I don't think I need any business leadership development. I've got where I am. What could I possibly learn from a game of golf?
Interesting. Yeah, no, so this could be a very short conversation. Yeah. So I think there's probably 2 points there, right? So one, the need for leadership development whatsoever, and then how does golf come into it? I think there's this thought process some of us have is, I got here well enough, didn't I? Why would I need to change the way I lead? And in an environment like we're in right now, where the world's changing like lightning all the time, hybrid working is this whole new boulder to overcome. We need to invest in ourselves. We need to explore different types of leadership style and different inputs from elsewhere. But golf is a really interesting one. So with golf, you're never really playing against someone else. Really, the only things that can influence you are the conditions, the course, and your ability to hit the ball that day, which is up here. So the two overlap. There's an awful lot we can learn both from golf, but also investing in leadership development.
Excellent. Now, anyone who's listened to the podcast or watched the video before will know that we like to have three things. We like to have three things that we can kind of hang these conversations on. So we've planned this in advance, dear listener, dear viewer. So number one, for golf business points, even if you don't like golf, the number one, what is point number one? Have you got it written down there, Paul?
Oh, so I think it's around the leadership development you can get on the course and the way they overlap.
Yeah, let's go for it. Let's start with that one.
So it's really interesting. Those people that play golf will know that there's this slogan that golf is 90% mental, and it's true. Essentially, you're using a long stick to hit a small ball in a straight line. That sounds really easy. The things that happen and change are your state when you come to the course. Now, if you think about most of the things we do at work, the main thing that changes is our reaction to what's happening. So the elements we can get from learning on a golf course are pretty immeasurable, but quite simply, you get a result straight away. So your self-awareness is good. There's an element here where you have to be strategic. You've got 14 clubs in a golf bag. Let's say there's 14
I can
in there.
See them just over your shoulder, yeah.
Placed there gently earlier. So there's 14 clubs in a golf bag, and I can use any one of those to influence my thing. And equally, in the business environment as a leader, I'll have a number of skills in my bag that I can draw on, and I'll probably go to the same ones and they'll be overused. But on the golf course, that you can see an immediate impact on. You can see what you're doing, it's strategic. But also you're tending to be part of a four ball most of the time when you play golf. So they're played in groups of four. Okay. So you rarely play on your own. And so you're influenced by the others without them being able to touch your golf clubs, touch your ball. And so it's about understanding.
That's why I got in trouble when I used to play golf. No one told me you're not supposed to do that. But
yeah, if you use the four ball in the right way, yeah, don't touch someone else's golf club. But if you use the four ball in the right way, it's really good for your well-being. So it's about understanding how you can use that. A lot of your listeners that play golf and are senior leaders might be used to being competitive during the week, so they might take that from the boardroom or from the office and then go, I'm going to go and join a competition on a Saturday morning at my local golf club. And so they're just competing all the time. What we enable people to do is use it a bit differently, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It's an interesting angle. So let's carry on unwrapping that. I like the way this is going.
So the aspect of how you overlap is something that we can go in a really interesting angle on. So we specialize in creating trust environments. So the whole leadership element of it is to take a group of people, understand how they can overlap in the right way, and by so doing have a round of golf that improves their well-being, their resilience, their effectiveness as a leader, right? So the way you do that is you remove competition from the game of the four ball. So really, you don't need to score at all. Most people do to keep track of how well they're playing that day, but you're not competing against someone else. And quite a common thing is to maybe have a beer or two as you're going around the course. So we tend to allow that to happen afterwards rather than involved in it. And by removing the competition, something really nice happens. So the first 5 or 6 holes, you might be talking about how rubbish you're playing today, how there must be a hole in your golf club, or how your shoulder hurts or your shoes are wrong, all the reasons for why you're not performing well. Right, that's quite common, and that will resonate with your golf listeners. But equally, the people that don't play golf, there's an awful lot of things we don't do perfectly, and we'll talk about that to begin with. But after those 6 holes, it normally takes about 10 minutes a hole. You're an hour in, right? And you'll be standing at the 7th tee, and we've discovered this thing that we call 7th hole syndrome. Now, there's all manner of problems with the way we're naming that. It's not a syndrome, it's not a medical condition, but it's the way we've labelled it for now. We find that if you create the right conditions, someone will start talking about something that really matters to them. So we've had people talk about being really close to burnout, and they didn't know they were, and they didn't know they needed to talk. We've had people talk about their financial issues and how they don't know how to talk to anyone about them or find it. We've had people really have this realization that there's this person or persons in their office they're struggling to deal with, and they're avoiding those conversations. And all of it tends to come out in a way that the person hasn't really planned to. And if you create that environment, you create this real good place for both well-being, but self-awareness and self-actualization. I think it's a really powerful space to be in.
So this leads us to point number 2 quite neatly in our things golf can teach you. And I've got a note here of what it is, and I'm going to say it, but I've got to be honest, I don't fully understand what it is, which works quite nicely in a podcast because it means you can explain it.
Well,
so
fabulous.
thing to learn number 2 from golf, self as an instrument.
Yeah, so when we first started out as an organisation, we're called In the Swing Leadership, and people thought that realistically we were a charity golf day or a jolly, right? That was broadly it. The reason we work is this concept, self as an instrument. It comes from organizational design, and it's really about an organizational design practitioner has to consider themselves in the work they do, because they're a collection of their experiences. So whether I'm making dinner for the kids, or I'm out of the shops, or I'm playing golf, or I'm in the boardroom, or in a project meeting, I'm still me. So a collection of my experiences and preferences and strengths and weaknesses. And so I'll be led by my own decisions. Now, what we do in the swing is flip that. So it's almost a weakness you need to be aware of in that context. In this, it's saying, okay, if I'm me in all these situations, if I'm introduced to a new leadership concept, let's say self-awareness, and understanding how my current state affects my team, and then I understand how that affects me playing golf, I can see it in a different lens. So we use it really to avoid those things like role plays and real plays and these things that people don't like. So instead of me saying, hey, now do a role play where you play this part, you play that part, which a lot of people don't like.
Instead, the instant reaction you get from that is clenching of buttocks around the room or a rolling of eyes when you're in a I used to do loads of training in a job many, many years ago, and they were always held in dusty village halls. And it's just the idea of, say I sort of joked that I don't play golf. I don't, but already the idea of being outside sounds a lot more appealing than that. But now you're talking about ditching role play as well. This is getting more and more appealing. So speak on.
Indeed. Well, that's the reality, right? So what you're doing is using the golf course as this prism. So I'm still developing my leadership skills. I'm still addressing these leadership topics. We make the topics things that you can quite easily take in different contexts. We're not going to specifically talk about a one-to-one framework and you have to go and do a one-to-one on the first tee. These are these skills that you can develop that are transferable, and it's enabling you then to put them into practice. What we've found, and your golf listeners will particularly like this, is you get better at golf and you get better in the office. So it's a trade-off in both directions, and it's something we're really proud of, not least because I've been in learning and development for over a decade. Role plays are something that are deeply unpopular for most, but incredibly popular for some. So there will be some people listening to this going, I really like a role play. We've replaced it with these things called real plays, where you bring your own situation and put it in it, but you've got to build a lot of trust with the people you're around to say this is a real thing. Whereas in this instance, going out on the golf course, you can replace this real thing with the context of that ball went in the trees because, and then you're exploring how you're thinking, how you're feeling, how you're showing up. And a brilliant example of this. So what we do is we do leadership programs, we do leadership days, but we also do executive coaching, right? And in the executive coaching space, we'll meet someone off the course, talk about what they're doing and what their challenges, what their goals are. And then we'll go on the golf course and see how that's showing up. We had one leader who talked about how they were really kind of working with the handbrake on. They'd know the right decision, but they wouldn't want to impose it on their team. So they'd maybe hold back a little bit. So when we're on the golf course, when we're on the first tee, they said, well, how does this work? I said, well, we just play and we talk. And so on the second tee, they'd hit this really brilliant drive in a great place on the course. And I said, what's your next shot normally on here? And they said, well, I'll normally drop it short. I've got a club that will get me to the green, but if it goes wrong, I'll be in that bunker. So I'll drop it short and then I'll play another shot. I said, see, you play with the handbrake on too. I said, today, it doesn't really matter. Let's see what happens if you take the handbrake off. And they were a much better golfer than me. Most people are. But they hit this marvellous shot. It just flew, dropped on the green and rolled about 3 foot away from the hole. And what they got was this realisation that if they play with the handbrake off and they work with the handbrake off, they're going to get better results. They're going to have faith in themselves. They're going to have to grow their confidence. But because the golf course is kind of a safe space to experiment, they can go, yeah, this works and it works for me. So I'm going to go and do it there. They called me on the Tuesday of the following week, and we did this on a Friday. They had the weekend to think about it. They said, at the weekend I won my golf club's golf tournament, which they were particularly happy with. And on the Monday I had my team meeting and I was decisive. I said, these are the things we got. And I got great feedback from my team. So it showed in that instance immediate results. It's not the same for everyone, but it's just this thing. If I work on myself here, it's safer, but it can have more meaning. And then I go, well, it worked there. I'm going to go and try it there. It gives me confidence. So it's a really powerful medium. It's one where we're the only people doing it in the world, but equally, I don't imagine that will be for very long, insofar as the results are there to be seen.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I can see that obviously with your background in golf and in learning and development for leadership, I can see that it's a natural fit for you. But I'm trying to think of other sports that it would fit, because there are other sports where you're not necessarily competing against somebody else all the time. Unfortunately, the only one I can think of is skateboarding, because there's a skateboard right here next to my desk.
Days.
But the idea of me taking people out, or going on a leadership thing for skateboarding would be hilariously terrible, because the first thing that happens if you're middle-aged and you skateboard is you get horribly injured really quickly. Whereas at least golf's a bit more kind of gentle and a bit more kind for you. So I'm really interested by this, because you say it's not. Might be using the wrong word, but it's not prescriptive. It's not, we go out and we do this. Like if you were sat in that musty village hall where you get the program that says, well, the first 15 minutes is going around saying, my name is Andrew and my favorite breakfast is yogurt. So it's not like that. And, the after lunch round robin and all that, and then so on and so forth. So how do you do it? I'm just interested on a practical level. So if you are you playing as well? I assume you kind of are. Otherwise, you'd just be like following the person playing golf. Like,
it depends on the context. So in our leadership programs, I'm not. So,
really?
So in our leadership programs, so this is going to sound like an advert, and I was really keen to just participate rather than be on sell mode. But nonetheless, so in our leadership programs, it's a whole day of activity supported by things outside of that. So if I take a day, for example, a leadership day, you'll arrive, you'll be welcomed, we'll talk to you about how it works. We'll talk a bit about that self as an instrument piece. Mm-hmm. We have a director of golf, although we don't call him that because his initials would be dog. You also can't. We tried golf operations director, but that would have made him God. So he's our he's our director of golf operations, our DGO. But he's a fellow of the PGA, a highly experienced top 25 golf coach, and he'll talk them through an exercise about golf and help them understand and contextualize how getting a bit better at golf. And we'll layer in really gently some leadership concepts in a way that you don't really notice, right? You come off of there, let's say it was on the putting green, but it could be short game, it could be full irons or driver, whatever it might be. You come off of there and go into a group workshop, which might feel normal, but we're in a golf course. And where we go from there is that we then introduce leadership concepts, really simple ones that are true. We try to aim for truisms. When you go, well, of course that's true. I should have known that before I got here, because then it's really easy to put into practice. We use academics, studies. I mean, my background is in leadership and management at universities, so we use latest academic studies to inform our work. And what happens then is you're learning. You've got this tuition on golf, so you've got the context before you start. Then we talk to you about a workshop. We have a bit of lunch, and then you go out on the course. Now, for our leadership days, we pick the UK's top golf courses. Now, that sounds like we're a bit elitist, but it's not. It's really intentional. I risk running into point 3 here, but I will talk about it a little bit. We use the pressure you feel of playing at a golf course where you don't think you're good enough to replicate what you're going to get in a boardroom or with a client where you're thinking this is really important. And then you can that replaces this role play, real play. You've got this whole layering that goes through the day and it becomes the whole thing for you.
Hey, sorry to disrupt the podcast just for a moment. I've got a special offer for you. If you go to yeseo.io/audit, we'll do a free website audit for you. Completely free. Could be the start of something beautiful. Could be the turning point for your business. That's yeseo.io/audit. Let's get back to the pod and talk about golf-ish things. Okay, so I'm gonna say what point number 3 is, and it's the practical experience to embed learnings, because I think we're at the perfect point to discuss that. I'm getting a better understanding now of how this theory kind of beds in. So the thing you're saying about taking people to a very prestigious course where they might not be a member or might not feel they're good enough to play, that speaks perfectly, even without my experience of golf, my bad experience, which is my fault. It makes a lot of sense, because I go to coaching days, which I get a lot out of. I read a load of books. Like a lot of people who run a business, I absorb a lot of information. And I get the sense a lot of the time, if I'm reading a book by especially some of the very big people like Seth Godin or the real big hitters in that world, I think that might be lovely when you've been sat in your boardroom, with your multi-billion pound company and you've got all these other high-flying people, but it doesn't relate back to me in any way. And I think that's dangerous. Only speaking about my own mindset, because if you're offered the opportunity through your business growing to go into a boardroom like that, or even go into a larger company, you think, well, I haven't got the preparation for this. I haven't got it. So I'm absolutely seeing the parallels there.
Yeah. And it's so for our leadership programs, we will intentionally pick those courses. So the most recent one actually was at the Centurion Club, which as a non-golfer, that doesn't have to mean anything to you.
I imagine there's loads of listeners going, woohoo!
They're going, wow, yeah, right. It's an amazing place. And if any of them they are watching, they're wonderful people that run Centurion Club. They're just really lovely to do business with. But the interesting thing for people going there, the week before we were doing our program there was something called the Aramco Series. That's a women's golf women's golf tournament, and the best women golfers in the world were there the week before. It was televised. It was a big event. And the year before that, they had something called Live London, which is the Live Tour is a major golf tour with some really big stars on it, and they were there the year before. So it's very hard not to know what the Centurion Club is. It's very hard not to know about the prestige.
I've probably seen it on telly.
There you go, right. Well, all these people that have come along to our leadership day know that in the afternoon they're going to get to play golf there. So the whole day is building up to that. So you have that piece where I've got this meeting with a big client in the afternoon and you're feeling that bubbling up of tension. And when you get to the first hole, the hole there leads down into some trees. It narrows down as you go. It looks beautiful. It's very well kept as a course. And you're thinking, I've got to hit it down there and hit it straight. So we had, on our last group, we had 4 golfers. We try not to go for big groups so people get some real support from us. and 3 of the 4 golfers put the ball in the trees or wide of the hole, because it's built up. And in fairness, learning how to deal with that pressure and talk about it as you go is a good thing. So we put executive coaches with them as they go around to help them to understand their learning, help them find their golf balls as well, right? And I'd be the same. I'm not a great golfer.
This is the practical experience.
Yes, yeah. And we've also got our golf pro going around to help them with pointers on how to play golf. So you get the prism of both, and because you're working on both, it makes it this space where you can take the learning and take it away. The interesting thing is there's this really simple thing. There's loads of different learning styles. I'll take the simplest one so people don't have to go away and read and Google. Let's talk about VAC learning styles, right? So that's visual, audio, and kinesthetic learners.
Okay.
Now, if you're a visual learner, you learn most by seeing things, visualizing this. You're a real visual learner. So a visual learner on an In the Swing course will remember the shape of the shot they hit. They'll remember where it landed. They'll remember the places and the way it looked, right? That's really great for them because they've got that to lock their learning in. An audio learner, for the golf listeners on the radio, on your podcast.
On the wireless.
On the radio. It's that tape deck you've got in the background. It's confusing me and sending me back in time. So your golf listeners will think of audio learning, and they'll probably, if you are an audio learner, you've probably got ping golf clubs. They're called ping because of the noise it makes off of the face of the club. Yeah. So you'll like the sound the club makes, you'll like the sound of the ball dropping in the hole, and you'll tie your learning to those things. And if you're a kinesthetic learner, well, your golf swing will tell you how it's going. You'll feel how it's going. You'll feel the ball hitting the club, and you'll remember how it felt to hit these shots that went well, and you'll tie your learning to that. So the recall from people on our programs is off the chart for anything I've done in learning and development before. So it's been really powerful. There is a caveat though, right? We don't just make people uncomfortable. So for an executive coaching...
It's really good to point out, come along, like, the cringe factor will be high, but it's all important. No, so it's not that way, not that way at all.
Yeah. For executive coaching, we'll quite often go to someone's home golf course, or they'll come to ours, and we won't go to these elite golf courses because there it's about building trust, deepening the conversation. And if you're someone, when you get executive coaching, you struggle to open up to someone, which is something that you and I probably don't suffer from, but some of your viewers or listeners might. What happens then is instead you can't really hold yourself in and not talk about the things you were trying not to, and concentrate on hitting a small ball with a long stick in a straight line. So what happens is you tend to open up a little more than you would in ways you don't expect. You have that 7th hole syndrome also to contend with in these conversations, and it means you can get more out of your executive coaching quicker. So we're seeing benefits every which way we go, and people get outside. They get the benefit of that green air and things like that. So it's been a real pleasure so far, but we are still overcoming the bit that people think that we are broadly a charity golf day and a jolly. And actually, there's a lot of science that goes into, as you can hear, what we do.
I mean, there's things I could say to be flippant, which I wouldn't. But I think one of the things you might have going for you is the senior executives who probably approve the budgets for training. And so if it's them playing the golf, it's not like if you had like people very, very junior, I'm going to go play golf for the day and come back as a brilliant leader. Oh, yeah, now. So, that's
now they'll be able to show someone this podcast and go, it's not that actually. Look at what I'm going to be doing. Isn't this amazing? But the other thing is, you were right earlier, right? Skateboarding, other than people having to sign big waivers and us spending half our time taking people to hospital, it probably would work because it's you influencing yourself and it's creating the environment around you where you can focus. Yoga works. Martial arts, for the most part, works, despite the fact you're combatants. It's still something where you're focusing on you and you're focusing on how you move. There's something about the self-awareness of, I'm moving freely today, so I'm not forcing myself. I'm not holding back. I'm in this state of flow, I think is probably for another podcast.
With skateboarding, it absolutely is about mindset. So dropping in, you stand on the edge of a ramp, and I'm 6 foot tall, and if I'm stood on a 9 or 10 foot ramp, my brain, my eyes are quite high off the ground, and you're looking at a curve that starts vertical and drops down, so like a slope. And the only thing that stops people being able to step over the edge is a fear of getting hurt. And it was the first time in my 30s, the first time I just went, I'm just going to get hurt. That's just the way it is. And I just tipped over the edge and went, okay, it's actually quite easy. So then I like that. You can interview me if I we start doing a skateboarding
Let's do it.
skateboard leadership thing.
If anyone's interested, we can always make something. Let's see if anyone respond to us.
It's so tempting. No, I do SEO. That's what I do. I run the SEO. That's what I do. Unfortunately, we are running out of time a bit here. But anyone who's listening to this, I always like to ask my guests if there's one thing they want the listener to remember. What would it be? I'm going to ask you to do that in 2 flavors here. First of all, I'm going to give you the easy flavor. If somebody is a golfer and they're listening to this and they're very interested and engaged in leadership development, what's the one thing out of everything you said you'd hope they'd remember?
So I would hope they would remember it's not all about going and competing. It's about engaging with the people around you and opening up. There's so much to be gained from the conversations you have on the golf course, because people really truly open up, and we have to be vulnerable. When you're playing a bad game of golf, there's nowhere to hide. You're just playing a bad game of golf. If we accept that if I'm having a bad day off the course, this is a place where I can come and talk about it, then we can get so much richer relationships on the golf course.
Fantastic. So the second flavour, somebody who isn't yet a keen golfer, and they've listened to this podcast or watched it, what do you think the one takeaway you'd want them to have would be?
So my daughters have recently taken up golf, and they're very young, so 8 and 7. And the elements around golf that are really powerful is there is a social side, but there's also a really good well-being side. You don't have to be strong to play golf. The club does the work. You don't have to spend the earth. There are great programs to get involved with, and I'm in the risk of becoming a promoter of England golf here. And they do plenty for themselves, but have a look at what's available, or go down to the local golf course and see how you can get involved. Being outside is great. In Japan, for example, they talk about forest bathing, which is essentially going for a long walk in the woods, because you're surrounded by greenery. It takes in carbon dioxide, it puts out oxygen, so it's an oxygen-rich environment. It's great for your well-being. So I'd encourage them to get involved. It's a far more inclusive sport than I think it probably gets as a press. So yes.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for your time. I will put the details of how people can contact you in the show notes. And that's it. Do you want to have the final word?
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a genuine joy, as I knew it would. So thank you very much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. How great was that? Thanks again to Paul Miles from In the Swing Leadership for getting involved. I just wanted to say his company name again, because he kind of whipped past it a few times. I think it's important. His company name is In the Swing Leadership. This is not a promoted podcast. It's just, if people give us that much value, I really want to make sure you, the listener and the viewer, can actually track them down and find them afterwards. The other brilliant bits of value, these 3 things that you can learn from golf, whether you're a golf fan or not. I just want to whip through those again. The first thing you can learn from golf is about leadership experience. The second one is yourself as an instrument, the self as an instrument. The third one was practical experience to embed learnings. 3 really useful things. So there you go. If you play golf, what did you think of the episode? Let me know in the comments. If you've never played golf before, I'm sure it was still relatable. It certainly was to me, and I'm not a golf stick owner. Golf stick. Anyway, just remains to say thanks for listening, thanks for watching. Please rate and subscribe. It makes a huge difference to everyone involved with this. And finally, tell your mum.